Hello, we have a new show today called U.S. and China, and right now it's Sunday, March 29th, and I'm here in Beijing. My name is Thomas W. Pauken II, a writer and researcher based in Beijing, and I'm author of U.S. versus China: From Trade War to Reciprocal Deal.
Hi, my name is Edward Say. I'm a strategy and management consultant. I'm currently in Hong Kong.
Good to hear you, from Edward, from Hong Kong, and we definitely have a lot of news to talk about today. So a lot of big stories coming out this weekend.
Hi, Tom.
Great, good. Okay, so as you know, it seems as if we had a very successful online G20 online coronavirus summit a few days ago. Right after the meeting, Trump and Xi had a very good phone call. What are your thoughts on the Trump and Xi phone call?
Well, I think it's always good to have communications between the leaders of the major powers in the world, in particular between China and the USA, and having frequent and very friendly communication to make sure that the dialogue is open and that there's an open communication of what's going on both sides. Is always very good.
That's good. Now, of course, they had a very productive meeting, and it was, I thought, also very positive. But unfortunately, I received some messages today, and it came from very high-level sources, and it revealed and disclosed to me that, yes, indeed, Washington and the U.S. is encouraging many countries to export their face masks, their medical equipment to the USA based on emergency orders, so a lot of them do not face any FDA restrictions or need approvals. However, there is only one country that is not on the exemption list. And guess what that one country is? China. So, Edward, I'm a bit shocked by this. I'm, to be honest, very disappointed to hear about this, and I find it very disturbing. What are your thoughts on this China not getting the exemption here?
Yeah, I think in this time of a global crisis, where a lot of countries, including China, the US, and many other countries were affected, and some are more serious than some others.
Okay.
It's very important that all the countries with the capabilities and resources should try to help the other countries.
Sure.
The virus is a global issue. The virus doesn't really understand national borders. They don't care about who you are, which country you represent, what politics you believe in, and so on. The virus is a virus, and it's a common enemy for the entire humanity. So I think the priority for humanity is to try to, arrest this issue, arrest the virus, the pandemic, and it requires all of us to work together. So, I really wish that all the countries can be very open-minded and are willing to work with one another. Whoever has the resources and capabilities, help some others. Whoever need help, be open-minded and get help from others. I think that's the idea.
I also see another major issue as well, because let's just think about it from a very logical perspective. Right now, Japan is facing rising cases of the coronavirus. Europe is very hard hit. Much of Latin America is hard hit. Africa and Middle East, those countries in those regions are going to get hard hit soon. Right now, it seems that the only country that can really help provide and boost supplies and exports to the USA is none other than China. I find this really troublesome, and this really concerns me, because not even South Korea can supply America with enough face masks. And I mean, I just don't know what's going on. What are your American friends telling you about this? Are they aware of this FDA exemption? Do they know it's out there that Chinese products are being blocked from entering the U.S. markets? What are your American friends saying about this?
No, I think this is an ongoing news. I think I first heard from you, so I don't have any other American friends who are telling me But
Sure.
nonetheless, I think, as I mentioned, and you correctly said it just now too. I mean, many countries are suffering from the crisis, and many other countries are not that well equipped. America is one of the better equipped countries in the world in terms of public health and so on. But if you go to many other countries, in particular in Africa, in many other developing world, the condition is even worse, right? So
Sure.
let's really try to find a way to work with one another, because if the pandemic really breaks out in some of these
Yeah.
less ready countries, I think the whole world is going to be in deep problem.
Maybe we're going to focus mostly on solutions. I mean, of course, I'm upset, but we got to think about the solutions. And I believe the solution is going to come from Beijing, but the problem we have is that people are not trusting China. This morning, I had people send me reports and media reports saying that some of the testing kits weren't working in Spain. There were issues of quality being sent from Chinese products. But what's interesting is I also heard from CGTN, one of their articles, they were saying that what Spain had purchased, they purchased from companies that were not approved on China's listing of where to buy testing kits. So it's not like, China's fully at fault here. But what I'm getting at is apparently there is a major messaging problem on the side of China to say, trust us, we can help. And I lived in China for a long time, so maybe it's because I've lived here for so long, I forgot to see how to make the messaging better. But the reality is much of the West has a hard time trusting China. And what do you believe is a good way for China to improve its messaging, to improve how others can trust Beijing and Chinese manufacturers more?
Yeah, it's actually not a surprise that some of this news that have come out. It happens not only during this crisis, happened along, during China's reform and opening in the last, several decades. On and off, you heard, stories about China, and vice versa. You also hear a lot of stories about the West in China or from China that's not necessarily well founded. And the communication, we tend to say is sometimes not in the same wavelength, right?
Yeah.
And that's understandable because, the two countries or the two civilizations came from very different backdrop. And the world is trying to come along and try to understand each other. So, there are some glitches, there's some misunderstanding along the way. That's proper. That's understandable. However, as you said, correctly said, it's important for us to minimize those misunderstandings and try to, make the communication a smoother one. I think, as mature adults, we know that, it's okay to debate and argue on facts, on philosophy, on way of thinking, and so on. That's all right. But, it's not appropriate to fabricate ideas and fabricate informations and, try to tell lies, right? And that's not good. And I think it is, in a way, it's job for people like you and me and other people who really care about building a better world, creating a better bridge between the U.S. and China. And, I think it's our job to also, tell the story in the right way, China to the world and the world to China. And I think you being an American, I know I'm from Texas, but it's been living in China for well over 10 years. You're in a very good position. You ought to, really play the role of being a quote unquote ambassador, right? Ambassador from the standpoint of being a communication ambassador to make sure that there's, little chance of misunderstanding.
Yeah, and unfortunately, because I closely monitor the social media to get an understanding of the American attitudes and response, and recently I've noticed there's been a major uptick of anti-China-ism because of the coronavirus. They're really falling, I won't say falling, because who knows? I'm not saying China did perfect, but I mean, it's really strong anti-China. Oh, China's to blame. They're the reason we have this coronavirus. They're the reason why millions of people will die. they're not thinking of solutions. They're just thinking about, let's blame China for whatever it is. I understand why people can blame others. That's very easy to do. But what I'd like to see is, how can we change the attitudes? How can we get people to go, wait a minute, let's stop blaming and pointing the fingers at each other. Let's just think about how to solve this, okay? So it started in China, okay? But look at them. A month ago, almost 1,000 people a day were getting coronavirus. And then you had hundreds of people dying every week in China. Now, it's less than 10 people getting infected every day. And most of those cases are imported cases. Very rarely is it new. And it's just rather unfortunate, because now when China is offering its help, that you see these grand anti-China media campaigns that are saying, don't trust China. If they offer help, they are doing evil. They're trying to take over the world. It's very unfortunate. And I would imagine you probably hear this a lot in Hong Kong. Yeah, I would imagine, right, Edward?
Yeah, I'm in Hong Kong. I'm Chinese, but also I'm very international, and so I read both the Western media. Also, I read the Chinese media as well. I also get on social media like the Twitter and Facebook and so on. So I think I got sort of both angles of the information. I say, there's a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of misinformation. Some people are perhaps more extreme than some others. But, I think this negative energy is not very constructive, right? As you said, people can say whatever they want to say, even without facts. But in general, it measures out energy that is not going anywhere. I mean, it's actually creating a negative energy among all of us. And without a proper solution, without a proper way of getting out, more of this kind of negative energy is actually hurting us. As as the Chinese as well as the Americans. Frankly, because these two countries are so important for the world, it has negative impact in the world. So let's hope that we can find a way that we can help to reduce this kind of negative energy, and that's the job for people who have more rationality and more objectivity and are able to see things from a more objective dimension, and hopefully we could help steer the energy in the right direction.
Yeah, that's a very good point you mentioned about the negative energy. It's much stronger in recent days. But sometimes in a crisis, when really everything goes as bad as even worse than you can imagine, I also see a lot of times new heroes come about. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, it's really bad, but we have to move forward. So my gut feeling, and I've talked to Chinese people a lot. I can't say who I talk to, but let's just say I talk to some important people. And one of the things I keep reminding them is just be patient and never lose hope. Sure, right now, the negative energy is coming from the Americans, and it is quite vicious and nasty at times. But China just needs to stay above it. Don't get involved in the fighting. They're trying to get China angry so people can say, look, I already told you the Chinese are angry people. They really hate the world. Just stay calm, let the attacks continue, but sooner or later the crisis is going to get so severe that the US and Americans will have no choice but to call China for help. Do you believe that this is a similar scenario that's going to play out?
Well, as you said, I think we already begin to see some of those signs. When you said heroes coming out, I was thinking already about two people, right? Two persons. One is Bill Gates.
Sure.
The founder of Microsoft. The other is Jack Ma, who is founder of Alibaba, right?
Yeah.
So Bill is a white American. Very, very successful. One of the wealthiest guys, if not the wealthiest guys in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Jack Ma, Chinese.
Yeah.
they're also very successful,
Sure.
also very wealthy. But I think during this crisis, both of them have, really demonstrated that, you don't need to be a politician to do the right thing for the world.
Correct.
They came out.
Yeah.
Of course, they donate a lot of money and resources to try to help.
Sure.
Already. Importantly, they try to steer the philosophy and steer the mindset of the people. That in fact, we are encountering a global issue. It's not a nationalistic issue. It is a global issue that requires all the humanities to work together. And let's try to get out from this narrow mindset of tribalism and try to look at the world, as one world. That we got to address this together. I think both of these people are examples of what you call heroes. These are real heroes, and what they do actually, their actions transcend national actions. I think they're genuinely trying to help the world at the time when the world really needed help. So I think you're right. You're absolutely right. At this kind of time, this is a time when we see the appearance or the emergence of real heroes.
Yeah, I think part of the reason the China messaging is coming out is perhaps because the U.S. has been the sole superpower for so long. And then suddenly China has risen to the occasion. They had not only combated the coronavirus, that there are so few cases, but suddenly they're even helping Europe and other countries. So China's getting more influence. I think what Americans have to realize, and I'm American, as you know, and especially we Texans, sometimes we get a little bit too proud. Sometimes we get a little bit too arrogant, and that includes me as well, okay? But it's interesting. When you live in China for a long time, you learn real fast that arrogance gets you nowhere in China, okay? And the coronavirus has the same message for these folks, but it's going to be an even stronger message. So hopefully what I believe, and I think is just going to happen, is that when people suddenly realize that that the coronavirus is much more deadly and powerful than they could have ever imagined, that they need others to help. When they overcome their arrogance and they overcome their pride, and they say it's okay to ask China for help. And then if China says, you know what, yeah, you criticize us, but we want to be a responsible and good nation, we're still going to help you. What we have is FDA approvals, and whether or not the Chinese manufacturers have approval or not, they need to get quick approval to go past customs in the U.S. so that they can enter the U.S. American hospitals. We may say issues of quality, but the problem is many companies all over the world, they're not developing the best quality as well. But I think that if you have at least some type of inspections, and if the hospitals approve of the face mask, let them use it. So, Edward, what are your thoughts on how to get more face masks into America, considering the current circumstances right now?
Well, of course, you need to make sure that the products pass the required safety testing and so on. That's the requirement. At the same time, it's hard pressed to imagine how any China manufactured or made in China face mask it will not be accepted from the safety requirement standpoint, because China has been the epicenter for manufacturing for so many products for the world, including for the U.S. for such a long time, including for many medical products over the years. So I do not know enough details about this specific situation to really comment. But I would say that let's make sure that everything passes the safety test, but at the same time, let's not try to discriminate any product just because of the source of the production.
Yeah. Now, what's interesting I see here is that you have this scenario in place where really China can help. Okay, they can come to the rescue, but the Americans sound a little bit, shall we say, stubborn. Do you believe that this stubbornness is going to last a long time? They're going to say, I don't care how many Americans die, we can't work with the Chinese. What do you think is going to be the overall sentiments? Do you believe this stubbornness will be even stronger than the coronavirus? What is your opinion, Edward?
Well, first of all, I don't think that all the Americans are stubborn, because I do have many American friends, including yourself.
Sure.
Actually, most of my American friends are very friendly on China or towards the Chinese. We get along really well. But you're also right. I think there's a minority of perhaps people with certain degree of power from America who have a certain point of view on China, which is unfortunate, right? In my view, there are two levels of the issues. The issues that are more immediate. In other words, the issues that are related to how to address the coronavirus epidemic situation, which is very urgent and very severe. There's also issues that's more deeper rooted. It has to do with more than just the epidemic. It has to do with really many other dimensions of our two countries. In my view, the short-term issues, i.e. those who are related to the epidemic or the pandemic, ultimately rationality will have to come along, because when we're talking about people's lives and deaths, it's serious stuff. And no matter what your political agenda is and who you are and so on, ultimately, when it has to do with saving people's life, people should really go after that as an objective, try to help to save lives, right? And you get whatever help you could get to do that. So I think in the short term, we're probably going to see a certain degree of rationality, and hopefully some of these issues will go away. But I'm also not that naive to expect that all issues will go away. New issues going to be along the way as well. But I think rationality will prevail, because let's be serious, right? If you have people going to die, you try your very best to help, right? But I think the bigger issue, however, I think there's some deeper issues or deeper rooted questions between our two countries, which has to do perhaps with more issues related to ideological differences, different ways of political system, different point of view on definition of national security and so on. Those kind of issues will take some time to sort out, and of course, hopefully, by working closer together, especially at the common people level, like you and me and other people, we can help to resolve some of these differences. I'm pretty optimistic. I think the world ultimately will become a better world, but at the same time, it also requires people who really would like the world to be better, to try to galvanize, to work together, so that we don't end up with a major dispute between the two largest powers in the world.
And also, I'm just as optimistic. I'm not happy right now with some government officials, but I just believe that when the crisis gets worse, America is going to have to realize they can't do it alone. And when China offers its help, you're going to see a changed attitude among many Americans. Many Americans, there was a time in my life I was actually anti-China. And I thought Chinese government was the most evil government in the world, and they could do nothing right. So I used to be just like them. I know exactly what it was like. But when I saw the good people of China, when I came here to China and they helped me when I was dealing with some of my personal issues, and they gave me a second chance in life, I realized that the Chinese are really good people. And I think this is the moment when Americans are going to start to realize Chinese are human beings. They're good people. And when they're helping, it's not a political ideology. It's because they're human beings. When they see suffering, they want to help others. And so on that note, I want to tell all viewers, please stay positive. Don't let the negative energy control you. Do the best you can. And thank you, Edward, for talking to me, and we'll definitely talk again next week.
Thank you, Tom.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay, thank you. Okay.